vote is supposed to carry equal weight. And the way that you know that in approval voting, that the votes are carry equal weight, is that if there are 3 candidates in the race, and you vote for 2 of them, the only way that we know, or you vote for 1 of them, the only way that I can really balance your vote is if I can support the other 2. The only way that we know that our votes are equal is if I can cancel you out. If I can have an equal and opposite reaction in the voting franchise itself. And so that principle, that idea, you know, in the case of CES, it was a defense. We took that defense and we went on offense with it. And we said that test, that fundamental test of the only way I can know for sure that I'm equal to you in the vote is if for any way that you can express yourself in an election, for any way you can fill out the ballot, there's a way that I can fill out the ballot such that our 2 votes are taken off the table. And you know this in plurality voting, because if there are just 2 choices, and it's like, you know, your husband or wife likes one candidate and you like the other, you cast balancing votes, you both have taken yourselves out of the election, you're equal in that context. In plurality voting, you can see the inequality very clearly anytime there are more than 2 candidates because of vote splitting. And then where it gets a little more hairy is when you can do things like rank and score candidates. So, but that fundamental test to us is really primary. It's how can we know for sure that we're equal in the vote? That's where the test of balance came from.
So we have a few minutes left before questions, but since Aaron is referencing, I'm going to pass it back to you. Why doesn't a traditional system respect that, and how are you fixing it?
Well, I would say the traditional way that we vote with 2-1 plurality voting, it technically passes one person's one vote, and that each individual person's vote is weighted the same. And that's really not a terribly difficult question to pass. I think a more important question is not whether our votes are equal, but are our votes meaningful when we cast them? And right now, the reason that we're here is that there's a strong argument that our votes are not very meaningful compared to what they could be. And what we're looking for ways that when we cast our vote, it meaningfully makes an impact in terms of electing the people that we want to see elected and representing us. So whether passing that vote, whether we had an equal vote, that's pretty simple to pass in terms of weight. The real question, the real issue to pass is whether our vote is meaningful, and that's what we're pushing to make sure that when we're using a good voting method, that we're able to cast a meaningful vote.
Jennifer, if I can lead into this, because one of the options you get is you vote several times really in ranked choice voting in a way, right? But how does ranked choice voting, solve the problem, the lesser of 2 equal problems, and put it in the context of what it means for a meaningful vote?
So let's be honest here. Our elections are complicated, right? Whether you're dealing with any one of our systems or top 2, in the case of California, only half the country voted in a presidential election year. So it's on us to do the education. And then when we talk about the legal arena, we've seen in the courts, ranked choice voting is legal. It's valid. It works, right? We've got, as we mentioned before, nearly 30 states that have it or consider it. And millions of voters have used it. So I guess my concern is when it comes to this equal power, equal vote concept, which I'm a firm believer of, what we have to understand is, are we really allowing the people to decide what their conscience is without having to decide strategically, am I going to vote for this person that I really like, or am I going to vote for the person that's more viable because my vote might inadvertently help elect the person I like the least? Mm-hmm. So I guess my concern would stem from, are people going to try and find a way to game the system or use strategic voting? And that is actually a disadvantage for those folks who are highly educated, which is a large portion of the voters, versus those voters that are going to be voting for the first time. The fortunate thing about ranked choice voting, as I mentioned before, not only has it been proven in the legal courts, is people who know how to do it intuitively, right? When we have this traditional runoff system, where you've got 2 elections, 2 different electorates deciding who the winner is, with 2 very different turnout issues, why not do it in one election? I mean, here in Louisiana, in the state we're in right now, they're already using it for the military overseas voters. voters. Because they know we don't have enough time for those voters out there in the world, either in service or out of the country. They're going to send out one ranked choice voting ballot so they can rank as their preferences. Because if their first place candidate isn't in the race anymore, it's like they couldn't come back for that second election or that third election, right? We have these runoffs for a reason to try and get to a majority winner, which is what we're trying to achieve, right? We do not want plurality winner-take-all systems. So it's proven, we've got it in place. In Cambridge, Massachusetts, 95% of the voters get one of their top choices elected. That's a very different system than the current winner-take-all system where up to 49.9% of the voters can have none of their candidates elected, right? So I can say firmly that we've got the data to prove it, we've seen it in the courts, it's shown that it works.
Starting to go through these questions. Well, a lot of you are obviously
That's
in the weeds with us. It's a good question. So one of the big focuses of the public attention was the Electoral College. Obviously, the mainstream discussion about it tends to be, who does it help or hurt, or should we get rid of it because whether it helped the Republican Party or the Democratic Party. One of the frustrations of voters is, they're feeling like their vote is not meaningful. But can you put in the context of the Electoral College system, does your system, one, relate to it, and two, how would you apply it?
So FairVote nationally, we work in coalition with the National Popular Vote Interstate Compact. So in that respect, that's the reform that we would advocate for. You can hear that throughout the conference. But I could point out an instance where we've got a primary process that looks different for every state. Some states, like the caucuses, you already see ranked choice voting in action in the caucus arena. Candidates, the voters get to see right away, oh, is my candidate in the lead? If they're not, I can decide to go for my second choice. But if you look at the Republican primary process, you had a lot of those voting issues. Trump actually didn't have a majority of Republican support in polling data. So, it would be an interesting thought to think about how do we use ranked choice voting to eliminate those voting issues and the spoiler effect in the primary process in states that want it. But once again, it goes back to the communities, right? Those cities and states, they have to decide for themselves what's going to work best for us.
And so you're asking about the Electoral College?
Yeah.
Yes. So, right now there is, like Jim mentioned, there's a push for national popular vote using an interstate compact between states, which is just an agreement between states to, a certain threshold agree to use a national popular vote. And that is certainly better than what we have now using the Electoral College. But taking that approach, at the end of the day, say that compact reaches the 270 threshold of electoral vote triggered, you're still using this choose one plurality voting method, which is awful. The only reason it sounds better is because they managed to somehow take an awful voting method, plurality voting, and make it worse by nesting that within the Electoral College. So that's the only reason that sounds better when you're talking about having not this plurality voting. So one of the nice things about approval voting, when you select as many candidates as you want and the candidate with most votes wins, is that it has some nice features to it. One is this feature called precinct summability, which means that you don't need to have all the ballots in a central location. You can tabulate them at the precinct level and then bring those together. And that feature is actually really important if you're going to be using something where each state has to be calculating their own vote at the state level and then at the federal level, is that it really creates an opportunity to be utilized for presidential elections, which is something that a lot of voting methods can't do because it needs that precinct summability feature. And because of approval voting simplicity, it has that. So not only will you be getting rid of the Electoral College, but you'll be able to also cast your vote in a meaningful way instead of the terrible way that we do right now when we're restricted to selecting only one candidate.
I would tend to agree with both of you, right? Which is one is that certain precinct summability is only well. So to me, the low-hanging fruit from the new voting method approach for the presidential is the primary. Because that is inside of the container of the state, inside of the container of the existing partisan infrastructure. Once you get to the if there is a national popular vote compact, and I do think when we talk about the Electoral College, and I can't remember who said it on Friday, but it was remembering that the Electoral College has its roots in slavery. That's the whole reason why it exists. That the founders were clear in the early documentation that was the compromise. But that, you know, the way to fix it is to, for at least from a voting method perspective, is to start at the bottom and work your way up. And then the last stop from the voting method perspective is actually the final presidential election. But to Aaron's point, if there are going to be 50 different states that count votes in different ways, you have to have a system that is summable by precinct. And that's you know, where the precinct in that case is the entire state. And that is also one of the advantages that star voting brings.
Well, there's a lot of good questions in there. I'm sorry I can't get to all of them, but I'm gonna have one that I think maybe a lot of us would probably think about. I don't know if any of us know the answer. How would your system affect what we call now the two-party system?
It would affect it awesomely.
More parties, Republican parties, Republican parties.
I think it would allow parties to be who they are instead of allowing parties which are today amalgamations of viewpoints trying to get to 50% plus one. Right? Like, okay, now we're going to adopt this particular viewpoint, we're going to bring that into our platform so that we can topple the one other party. Suddenly it allows, you think about the two major parties, the Democrats and the Republicans, they are the generic brands of democracy, right? That we're a democratic, a representative democracy that is a republic. Those are the generic names. They really have no underlying meaning. The third parties actually have brands that mean things, right? The Green Party, the Libertarian Party, the Constitution Party. They have particular missions and particular groups. So being able to have a multiplicity of parties and have voters suffer no penalty for joining a party that is not one of the two generic brands of democracy, I think is just a giant advantage of having a system that truly gets rid of the spoiler effect, that lets people truly vote their consciences. Because once you're there, then people can sort out the viewpoints that they think make the most sense.
There was a question here too related to ranked choice voting specifically, and that, you know, there's the danger of having too many people on the ballot. One, how would you respond to that? And two, do you think that ranked choice voting will lead to more parties, less parties, or will it still be a focus on the two people?
So that's a really good question. Whoever asked it, major props to you. What we've seen, I mean, there's a reason why folks like the Green Party and Libertarians and Californians, we actually get more and more people that are declined to state, so not affiliated to any political party. What the benefit is with something like ranked choice voting, as we've heard, you don't become the spoiler, right? You don't have to vote for someone that you feel like you have to vote for because you don't want someone else to win. No, I'm going to vote for my third-party candidate. I can vote for someone who's not even politically affiliated. So it's working in Minnesota. It's worked in the Bay Area. There's a reason why the Green Party folks in the Bay Area liked it and championed it when it first got passed in San Francisco in 2012. As far as the question of too many candidates on the race, I think there's a benefit when you have greater choice, right? You have more options to choose from the candidates that you think best represent you. And be able to capture that in a way, not only saying, hey, there's so many choices, but I can actually meaningfully say, who do I like more, right? Who do I want in office? And people have been able to do that in Minnesota and Cambridge, Massachusetts. This is a city that has been using proportional representation ranked choice voting since the 1940s. They have all of their seats up at the same time for city council because that allows the fair share, right? Everyone gets a seat at the table. If your community, whether that's politically party affiliated or race or gender, ideologies, whatever it may be, you all have a stake in the race, right? So talk about all the candidates on the ballot. When you have all your city council seats up at the same time, you get to decide right away, okay, well, these are my favorite. I'm going to meaningfully be able to
So on the question of whether approval voting would encourage more candidates and more support for third parties, undoubtedly yes. And that's a good thing because just like we want competition in the marketplace, we want competition within democracy as well. And in terms of having a lot of candidates on the ballot, well, there would surely be more candidates on the ballot. Partly because people running would be afraid of having this border label attached to them, because people could actually support that candidate without any kind of fear of electing someone that they would prefer not to. The other nice thing about an approval voting ballot is that it really lends itself well to a lot of candidates. So let's say that it does encourage a lot of candidates, even for a single winner election. Say we have like 10 or 15 candidates. Well, if you're simply selecting as many candidates as you want, that's a very simple task for the voter. So it doesn't require a lot of cognitive effort, and it lends itself well to a simple ballot design as well. The other component in terms of supporting third parties and independents, we know through the decades of literature on approval voting that third parties and independents get 5, 10, or sometimes even more times support than they do under plurality voting. And that's a direct consequence of being able to support your own statement and not fearing throwing your vote away. And not only is it giving these third parties and independents a much more accurate reflection of support, but because approval voting is so simple, it conveys that information easily. And when that information is conveyed easily, you can't marginalize candidates and you can't marginalize their ideas in the same way that they're being marginalized now.
I have one more thing to add. So this right here was mentioned over the course of the conference of the Harvard Business School. So when we talk about competition, do we have fair competition in our elections in our current state? No. And so, it says right here, we need to institute ranked choice voting with instant runoff in general elections. And in the state of Maine, I refer back to, they're going to be voting on this in June. So allowing for greater choices, not only within the political establishment, but also those that are not the Democrats or Republicans who get greater choice with it.
Yeah, I would just push back super strongly on the notion that that too many candidates is a problem. I think what really underlies that question is, and not to push, but what I get a lot out there is, what about the average voter? As though the person I'm talking to is not an average voter. I'm talking literally thousands of average voters. They get the system immediately. They're like, that seems cool. I'd go 5, like, that sounds great. But there are a lot of people in the reform community who are worried about the average voter. It's like, the idea is that the average voter is somehow stupid and can't handle looking through the voter guide and deciding how they want to vote on the ballot. And I think that's it's just not accurate in terms of the broad electorate. There are a ton of smart voters out there. They can handle a multiplicity of choices. And if the trade-off is between having a lot of good choices in one general election or forcing candidates to run through a filter months before the general election, so extending the length of the campaign season, forcing them to raise more money, culling out the candidates who couldn't raise a lot of money, so now we're advantaging candidates who actually raise money, and then, that's somehow a better way of doing it than just giving people one good vote, one good equal vote in November, I think is a big mistake. And I think it's a big mistake for the reform community in particular. We have to look as a group at voters as being not the problem. The system that we vote with is the problem. The voters are hungry for a system that actually works correctly. And so, you can certainly lessen the number of candidates by doing things like having a higher threshold of number of signatures to get on the ballot. There are a lot of things you can do to make it so that you got to jump through a higher hoop to get on the ballot. But once you're there, I think the real challenge is forcing candidates to have really long, grueling, multiple election campaigns. That is the giant turnoff to me to getting good candidates actually stepping up for office in the first place.
And added to that, I would say, when you we've got really divisive politics right now, right? It's us versus them. rather than greater choices and more voices at the table. And so adding to your point, any one of our systems allows for us to be able to have not only choices in our elections and candidates who can run and feel like they can run authentically, right? And be able to vie for every single vote and not fall into the divisive politics of us versus them. But hey, we might disagree on some of these issues, we might disagree just on the nuances of it, but there might be some common ground here. And the voters ultimately get to say, well, yeah, I like these candidates for different reasons, and I get to be able to express that.
I think we're close to out of time, so I'll ask one more question. Appropriately, we're at a conference hosted by Represent Us, talking about unrigging the system. So, in 2 or 3 minutes or so to close it, I want to ask the question. We've talked a lot about voters and different options and stuff. How does this ultimately lead to better representation for us? You want to start?
Well, you know, and this really, to us, that comes down to a combination of expression and science, right? You look at, and the funny thing about a voting system is it's just an algorithm. It takes as inputs all the ballots that people cast according to how they're allowed to cast them. It does some machinery, and then it spits out an answer. And so, you know, for us, the real question from a representation point of view is, how can we model what is a truly representative voting algorithm? And that's where we really relied heavily on the people who do the voting science. People like the Center for Election Science, Center for Range Voting, you know, Harvard math PhDs to say, okay, which of these voting systems really produces the most representative outcome? And you know, for us, it was you know, because star voting is a new thing. A lot of the research that you know, goes back decades doesn't talk about it, and so it's really only in the last year that people have started to say, okay, let's put this new thing in the models and see how it stacks up. And we were, you know, very gratified to learn that it's top shelf. That combination of allowing people to express both the level of support and preference within a single ballot ends up producing just an incredibly representative outcome. Even when there are strategic voters in the field trying to game it, what we found is because of that runoff step, it's actually very, very hard to game it in some kind of a strategic way.
So with the approval voting, in terms of the ultimate representation that it provides, it tends to elect more consensus winners, which is a stark contrast to the current method that we have now. The current method that we have now, when you're choosing a candidate, you tend to have more polarized outcomes because of the way that vote splitting can occur when there are a number of candidates. Normally, because we use a lot of restricted ballot access, in the general election, we often don't get a lot of choices, but that polarization tends to occur in the primaries with the method that we use now. But in terms of getting the outcome that we want, approval voting tends to elect that more consensus winner. But there's also some operations going in the background because a voting method, one of its responsibilities is not only to elect a really strong winner, but it's also to give a much accurate reflection of support for all the candidates, even candidates that don't win. And so, in instances where third parties are on the ballot, independents are on the ballot, approval voting does that really nice job of giving them an accurate reflection of support. And when you have these other candidates getting an accurate reflection of support, their ideas get heard, and so that can also influence other candidates in the race. And that's something that is just not currently done right now, because right now, you only hear about the two front runners from either major party. When other candidates can join in that dialogue, you're going to hear a completely different discussion. And that's going to shape not only who has the potential to win, but what that winner does, given that they're in this environment where these new ideas are being discussed in a way that they just weren't able to have happened before.
So I want to start off by saying this is personal to me. There are not a lot of people that look like me in office. And when I first ran in 2010, in my mid-20s, one of the reasons was because in a city that had a large population of Asian Americans was not actually represented in City Hall. So being a candidate, a first-time candidate, and knowing that I only had to run once, so there wasn't a primary election that was gonna be a big burden, raising money and running a campaign, to have not only someone like me run for office, but then the voters ultimately get to decide, hey, is this someone that I want in office to represent me? And so when you look at the cities around the country that have ranked choice voting, you can see that more candidates, kind of like me, put their hat in the ring because they say, you know what, I'm going to do this because I'm doing this for my community. Right? So when you're able to see that play out in an election and seeing an incredible turnout of people and ranking their ballots and saying, these are all the types of candidates that I want to represent me, you actually do get a better result, not only with greater diversity of candidates that run, but ultimately greater diversity in the candidates that win. Right? So you see better, and let's be honest here, right? When we talk about gender parity issues, we have someone here, some people from the Represent 2020 here, talking about gender parity issues. Every single state around the country has a pretty bad grade when we think about who's in elected office. So what we're trying to do is unrig the system by which people are running as candidates, that voters get to vote for who they really like and have a say in who's going to make policy on issues that we truly care about. So I can say that all of us are trying to do our best to do that, but we can't do that alone. We need you in the room with us to keep fighting the good fight, to keep this going, because no one is going to give it to us lightly, right? So we got to be out there, self-organize your communities, run for office, start as a local chapter or a group, get affiliated to any one of the causes, get signature gathering effort, get it on the ballot, contact your elected officials, and just make it happen. And ultimately, the implementation is a challenge for all of us, even if we pass it in law. Be willing to put up the fight through the courts, through the implementation process, to ultimately then see it in the lives of voters.
That's our panel for today.